Hello and welcome back to the Edge Biz Podcast with Chip and Christy. I'm Chip, the host, and with me as always, the lovely Christy Ogle. The Edge Podcast is all about entrepreneurs, being a problem solver, getting the correct mindset to be a business owner. All in all, this podcast is just about being a business owner, what to do, how to avoid mistakes, new easy ways to market, the best ways to market your business. Whatever's going on in business, especially local service-based businesses, that's what we like to talk about here on the Edge Podcast. And this week, we are going to talk about the best way to open your own handyman business. How does one go about starting a handyman business in their area? Christy, how did you get started?
You know, believe it or not, I wasn't born with a hammer in my mouth. I was actually grew up doing handy stuff because I was so ornery with my grandmother. I always had to be doing something or I was into something. So she made me do like handyman work around the house. I remember putting up fence on the farm. I remember painting ceilings, fixing drywall holes that I made, all kinds of stuff when I was a kiddo. But I never in a million years thought that I would grow up and be a CEO of a handyman business and coaching other handymen across the world. But it happened about 10 years ago, give or take a year or two. I was a social worker, a service coordinator, but it's a lot like a social worker. And my husband was a Harley Davidson mechanic. And I remember that the day that changed it all. And it was the day that my daughter, she's amazing. She's an amazing athlete. And when she was about 10 or 12 years old, she was at her first softball game for the first time up to hit. And she hit a grounder out to the outfield. And she goes to first base and she rounds to second. But her coach said, stop. And then all of a sudden he's like, steal, because they like dropped the ball or something. So Abby starts running and she slides into second base. And I'm videoing it with my camera because, you know, it was the first time a baby girl had ever like played softball. So she slides in and then I hear somebody out of the corner go, that little girl just broke her ankle. No, she didn't. I'm like sitting there waiting for Abby to get up, She didn't get up. Max takes off. And he goes to Abby and she broke her leg. So we take her to the hospital. We lived in rural Texas, so it was about 20 or 30 minutes away. Come to find out they were going to have to do surgery the next morning. They are getting ready to wheel her into surgery. And I realized, I probably should call into work. So I call my boss and my boss says, hey, Chris, did you get those notes put in? I said, no, I didn't from yesterday. I'll put them in by the end of the week. She goes, no, today's the end of the month. I need you to put them in today. And I said, I don't have time. I'm at the hospital with my daughter. And she goes, well, you've got your BlackBerry, don't you? Now this is aging me, Chip. And I said, yeah, I've got it. And she said, well, why don't you just put your notes in on the BlackBerry? So I hang up the phone. They wheel my daughter into surgery. Max and I are sitting there in that waiting room. And we decided that day to start a handyman business. So a $40 ad, and a few weeks later, Max leaves his job as a mechanic. 3 months later, I left my full-time job, and it all started with an ad in the newspaper because somebody at my job just over broke told me I couldn't do what I wanted to do and spend the time with my daughter. So we decided to take control of our lives because that just over broke. They wanted me to do what they wanted me to do, when they wanted me to do it, and I had no choice. So that's when we took that $40 ad and put it in the newspaper. Now, our podcast today is about how to start a handyman business. I really wish I'd read this article or saw a video like this before I started a handyman business. I don't even know if YouTube was around 10 years ago. I'm sure it was. But like today, now I know these things, but I wish somebody would have told me before I started the handyman business, because we struggled back and forth for years. So that's how we started it, Chip.
Well, let me tell you something. $40 newspaper ad, probably not the way to go anymore. The newspaper is not necessarily the place to be when you're advertising for your business, but it was at that time, and y'all were able to capitalize on that one ad and start a business, which is so amazing. That's why opening a handyman business is really, it's not hard. It's so easy. Anybody can do it. My personal story about how I started mine is I had no intentions of having a handyman business when I got started. When I became an entrepreneur, I got into digital marketing, building websites, and I would build my own websites, rank them on Google to start bringing in leads, and I will forward the leads to a business for rent. They pay rent for my website, basically, right? So I built out a bunch of different niches. I still have a bunch of different websites, like for roofing. Handyman obviously was my third one. Party rentals. I had all kinds of, but then, so my handyman business website was the first one to just leap immediately to page one and start bringing in business, because it was low hanging fruit in my area. I only had one other competitor that was actually doing digital marketing, and I'm now on a podcast with. When it comes to, that was Christy's business, but and I looked into that. So I started getting all these phone calls for handyman businesses, and I could not get anybody to pay me for them. I couldn't get anybody that wanted to scale their business. Everybody that I found was content with what they had and didn't want to, they were either doing it really well or they just didn't want to hear it. So, and I started asking these people what they needed, and come to find out it was stuff I could do. I literally started my handyman business because I was getting leads for the niche, and I didn't have anybody to take them. So I started taking them myself. I think for my first job was $250 to change the doorknobs at a frozen yogurt place in town. So, and I got big in commercial and helping out with commercial, a bunch residential, but I got started just because nobody really wanted to pay for leads, pay for ads, pay for business, which is, and that's the opposite of what I am. I know that you have to pay out there to get something back, but that's how my handyman business got started. And from there, I've been through 2-3 different contractors. I've got one that's steady with me all the time whenever I need them now. And I mean, it's doing great. But it's insane because if you would have asked me, even just maybe barely over a year ago, if I would be swinging a hammer or doing handyman jobs or even owning a business, no, I would have never said it would have been me doing this. But it worked out. And man, that's the thing. Handyman is still a low hanging fruit in all these areas. Christy and I see it all the time. To open a handyman business, it's almost silly not to do it if you're handy, or if you have a husband that's handy or a wife that's handy and you're better at the computer. If you have a partner, a friend, somebody that's handy and you can actually do this side of it, do it, man. Get out of that 9 to 5, get out from under somebody else's thumb and start doing what you want to do. Don't miss your daughter being at the hospital for your daughter. And the main reason I even became an entrepreneur in the first place was to be financially free and also be able to set my own schedule so I can watch my son grow up the way I want to watch him grow up, not the way my boss is going to make me do it, which is what 95% of the world is doing.
Yeah, and handyman businesses aren't just for people that are handy. I was a professional before I started this. Max was a professional service coordinator and mechanic at Harley Davidson. Chip, he worked at, a tow place. Like, anybody can do this. Now, I don't necessarily swing the hammer, but I have done everything that I asked my handyman to do. But yeah, you don't necessarily, if you're a woman and you want to start a handyman business, you don't have to be the one swinging the hammer. You could be the person that's back behind the scenes. You could have your spouse do it, boyfriend. You could also partner up with a contractor of sorts to get out of it.
Go to Home Depot, find some day laborers. I mean, I don't know what it is in your town, but there's people that'll take these jobs and want the money, and you can, I mean, honestly, you can start a business from your home and never lift your finger. If done correctly, you can have them answering the phones. If you can do whatever you want to do with this business. You don't have to be the one out there building the pergola or fixing the drywall or painting the garage, whatever the job is. Just because it's not your skill set, trust me, I say yes to everything. And when my company is called and they say, can you do this? I don't have to know what it is. I say yes, because I find somebody that knows how to do it, and I'll get it done in whatever that budget I have is, because there's nothing that someone out there, and people want jobs. People need jobs and need money all the time. You can find contractors in your area. But like Christy always says, you have to know how to do what they're doing a little bit, and you have to be the one that's watching your business's money, emails. You have to stay on top of the marketing, sales, and prospecting. That's really the main part you would have to be doing. Right, Christy? What do you think?
Exactly. So I own multiple handyman businesses throughout the state of Texas, and I don't answer the phones for any of them. I have an answering service that answers for them. I don't necessarily go out and swing the hammer. I don't live in the locations that I own the handyman businesses. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, anybody can do this. You just need a strategy to be able to pull it off. You can't just go, I'm going to open a handyman business, not live in this random city and not build it from the ground up. You do have to have those systems and sorts, but you can build a handyman business with just power washing. You can build a handyman business with just fixing the exterior of a home, or just installing TVs. Oh my God, $200 an hour is what we charge. Yep. To TV, and it takes 15 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, painting, whatever. And honestly, if you have like one thing you're really good at, you can turn that into a business. If it's service based, for sure. And the greatest part about this is, though, there's two ways to legally start this business. Yes. There's two ways to do this. One is the one everybody knows, and that's to get an LLC, limited license corporation, correct?
Limited liability company.
Liability. I knew I messed one up. But you get your LLC, and you don't have to have a lawyer anymore to do this. There's online platforms that help you go through it. And this is the way, what you eventually want, even if you start out with what I'm about to tell you about, the cheap DBA in your county. The LLC covers you for the state. You can work anywhere in that state with an LLC that you have. And actually, the United States, if I'm not mistaken, you can work anywhere with an LLC in the United States. But the other way, that doesn't cost $250 to $500 to get started, is to get a DBA from your county. Go to your county clerk, and it's usually like between $10 and $20. So I think it's like $13 or $18, to be honest with you. It's one of those two. And that's all it is. You get the DBA, and then it's just under your social security number, but you can go open a bank account in that name, and that makes it official to where clients can write checks to that company. You can open up a Square account in that company's name. You can start getting, commercial insurance, the commercial, for the same thing for your vehicle. Register your vehicle as a work vehicle, for tax purposes. You want to that's your gas, everything you do, especially as a solopreneur. If you're the one doing everything, answering the phone, doing the jobs and everything, this, you want it all together.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people toy with this idea to open handyman businesses, but they get overwhelmed. They get froze by this information overload. And that's not really what we want to do today. We want to just tell you basically how to start a business, an LLC, a DBA. You can also go the corporate route. You can start a corporation. I personally like the LLC. But it's so easy, and there's tons of low-hanging fruit out there to start this handyman business. But what it is it's your mindset. You've got to get over some of those limiting beliefs that we've been told our whole lives, get a good job with good retirement, that sort of stuff. but then those people actually do control you. So to start a business, it's simple. It's not easy. You've got to dot all your I's and cross all your T's, but it's simple. And to get into a business where you can charge, 50, 60, 80, 100, $200 an hour, depending on what your specialty is, it can really bring in some great income. And you don't have to have an education whatsoever. Now, some states do require licensing, but in the state of Texas, where we're at, you don't. In Missouri, you don't have to. There's about 36 states that you don't have to have a contractor's license to be a handyman.
Yeah, and it's so easy to get started. Make sure, and make sure to get the bank account though, like regardless, after you get the LLC, once you get the paperwork, get the commercial bank account. And that's gonna, help. Most people don't want to just sign over a check to your name. That's just one of those things that makes you stand out. You want to step above the people that are doing it without creating a name, creating a brand, and everything else that we teach and talk about here on this podcast. But the thing is if you're sick and tired of your 9 to 5, like we were, if you're sick and tired, and corporate America, make no mistake, is dead. What we were taught as kids is no longer taught today. Everybody knows that corporate America is dead. When you talk to older people, yes, it was beaten into their head, get a good job with a good company. But the minute IBM sold, it changed the game, man, because there is no company that will for sure still be here in 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Those days are done. The companies are switching and selling out all the time.
Yeah, so this year, over 4 million Americans left their jobs in corporate America. There's this mass exodus because of COVID of people leaving their corporate jobs to start their own businesses and work from home. I actually used to have a 2,000 square foot office and ran my business out of that in Hewitt, Texas. And when COVID hit, I realized I didn't need to be paying, $5,000 of my money a month to this huge office. So we left and we moved our business home, and we haven't missed a beat. We did 7 figures in the last 2 years with our handyman business and with more profitability because we got rid of some of that overhead. So $60,000 went in our pocket instead of to the landlord, electric company, cable, internet, that kind of stuff. So this is a perfect home-based business, and you can do it part-time too, Chip. I mean, you can do it evenings and weekends, and that's what we did when we started the business. Actually, for that first month, Max did it on his days off, which were Tuesday and Sunday, and did it in the evenings. And then we had a cleaning business too, so I do it on the weekends. But I mean, you can make a crazy amount of money just doing this part-time when you have the free time to do it, especially when you take that guesswork out of how to run and build a business and instead put in these systems. You're going to save decades worth of time and hundreds of thousands of dollars that you and I have spent in the stupid tax, and they're going to be able to get in, and if they're doing the work, be immediately profitable.
100%. That when you start a handyman business, you go get the LLC or the DBA, you go set up that bank account, and you get your phone, whatever phone number you're going to use, whatever address you're going to use, you get a website and start marketing, start prospecting, start sales, start doing all of the normal, entrepreneur stuff and networking, all of it. But ultimately, get the LLC or DBA, open the bank account, set up your phone number, and it's time to do whatever you need to do. The next step is contact Handyman Business Fundamentals, and we'll show you what to do.
Yeah, because a lot of handyman, I've seen it. So many get into this business. They think it's going to be easy. So I remember one of my business partners, the third business partner from when we started our handyman business, she wanted to leave her job because Max and I had left our jobs. And so she forced it about 6 months before the plan because she thought we were just, getting fat and happy, enjoying all this time off. And she came to work, I think it was November of 2013 is when she came aboard, and she would not show up at the office. Should have been my first internship. I shouldn't have kept her for 7 years. But she'd not show up at the office, or if she showed up at the office, she would show up for an hour at a time. And then she would leave, and I would see her like going and doing all this fun stuff while Max and I were the ones pounding the pavement, working our asses off. And needless to say, she's no longer with us because her work ethic never changed. But it just makes a difference when you're going to do this, like weekends, holidays, evening. In the beginning, you have to hustle. You have to do the work. If you don't do the work, whoever's hungry is going to come up behind you. So it's not that you quit your job and then you get to relax on a beach. You have to build to that point. You have to have a presence online. You have to hustle. You have to do the work to get the spoil. So a lot of people think that, starting their own business, they're in charge of themselves, which they are, but you're responsible to your customers. So I remember her saying pretty early on, like, my husband said by owning my own business, I should have this freedom and flexibility. Yes, true, if you would do the work. I mean, we fought for 7 years over this topic. So it is so important when you go into business with people to know there's going to be differences in your psychology, and you have to quick with somebody that has the same psychology. Like Chip and I. Chip and I aren't in the handyman business together, but we're in a couple of other businesses together, and we have the same mentality. He's like, I almost texted you at midnight last night. And I'm like, yeah. So, I mean, you have to have that mentality so that if you do what other people don't for just 5 years in a handyman business, you'll enjoy for the rest of your life what the other people only dream of. So keep that in mind. You've got to hustle. You've got to work at least for the first 5 years and probably beyond that.
Yeah, for sure. And you got to put the work in. If you watch anybody, like I watch my dad as an entrepreneur, he grew his business and for 15 to 20 years was miserable, head down, hustling, and then sold it. And he hadn't had to work a day in his life ever since. And he just knocked it out. Like he got down to it and he took care of it and he grew something that was worth it. And that's what you can do with this handyman business. Make no mistake. When my calls first started coming in, all I was getting was the spillover from all these companies that were saying no, they didn't have anybody they could spare. I guarantee you there are people in your area that need work around the house, that need work in their office, that you could find somebody to do, charge these people, the rates that you set up, 50, 75, 95 an hour. What do you set up? And pay the person the regular 20, 25 an hour. You can get this done. And even sitting at a desk, if you answer phones all day, start on your little downtime, start building something online, start creating a presence, and the phone's going to start ringing. Your emails are going to start coming in. You're going to start getting leads, and eventually you're going to have to reach out and find help because you're not going to know what to do with all the leads. And that's a promise from Christy and me that if you jump into this, if you start actually drop the 9 to 5 and start hustling and making a handyman business, you can make it work and you can make a lot of money.
Yeah, and when we started this business, I would answer the phones on my break because the phone calls would come to my cell phone. I would do marketing during my 2 15-minute breaks and also during my hour break. But in the beginning, Max actually would go and do small jobs on his lunch hour. We had this one old lady that lived right outside Waco. We called her Grumpy because she was so cranky when she called, but she would call once a week to go get her propane tank refilled because she didn't have a car. So she'd pay us $50 to go pick up the propane tank, take it to the gas station, get it filled, and then take it back. So it's so important to know you can start at part-time and then build it into your full-time, but you have to take action. Like Chip says it best, imperfect action. You have to take some sort of action to get your handyman business started. You can't just think about it, think about it, think about it. That's why Handyman Business Fundamentals is great, because we give you specific action items to take several times a week to build and grow your handyman business. But when you're starting a business, whether it's handyman or whatever it is, one thing that you really need to make sure is that you're healthy, because it is stressful starting a business. Have you ever seen that meme that, has like a young guy, he's so excited about starting his business, and he starts his business, and 3 years later, he looks like he's 92 and he's really in his 20s. Like, it's so true. Like, when we started this business, we had to be able to keep up. If your health is bothering you, you're the leader of the company. You need to have good health or be working on some sort of healthier habits.
For sure. And a clear mind and a drive. And also, I think one of the most unspoken things with that, you have to have the mindset of abundance. You cannot have the mindset of scarcity and that everybody's your competition, and that but you need to come in thinking that there's plenty out there for everybody. And that's how you start meeting other businesses. I promise you, you can get just as much business from other businesses in your town doing the same thing that you can off of a website if you work it correctly. Because people like doing specific things. Every handyman business is different and has different specialties. This is definitely something that you need to look into. And if you've been thinking about it, then it's time to do it. Take that action. I did it. I remember when I did it, I made my mind up and I didn't look back, because if I looked back, I would realize I am taking a huge risk and about to piss off a lot of people in my family, for a while, because you have to hustle and grind, man. It's tough. But then once you start getting out of it and momentum, it's a great thing. If you've been wanting to do this for a long time, this is something you need to just do. Don't think about it, just do it. Christy, anything else before we sign off? What you got?
A couple of more things that I want to go over. So if you're an introvert, you can still start a handyman business. Chip and I know somebody that is a super introvert. There was like somebody to talk to me, and he started getting this outgoing personality, and now he's one of my favorite people in the world to talk to. You've also got to have a personality that you can mesh with other people. If you've got an aggressive kind of personality that anything anybody says to you ruffles your feathers, you need to work on that, because customer service is very important if you're in the customer's home. So you've got to be very mindful. This is their safe space. You have to also be motivated personally. So you've got to be able to work on your own and problem solve. So those are a couple of things that you need to keep in mind when starting your own business. You want to be dedicated to your work. You need to be on time. You need to keep up with your deadlines. You have to be able to work under pressure. I remember hearing stories when we started our handyman business about Fixer Upper, and people that worked with Fixer Upper had a deadline, like the cabinet makers. And so they would work on the cabinets for the show, which had a deadline. And if they didn't finish them, it started taking away their money. So that's one thing that when we started this business, that we had that mentality that we wanted to work under pressure. So we always tried to finish early or on time. And another thing is you need to have that knowledge that Chip talked about, but also you have to have this failure is not an option attitude. Like, you burned your damn boats and this is the only thing that's available to you. When you've done that, like, literally don't burn your boats. You still want to like who you used to work with. But you have to have this mindset that failure is not an option. In the last 10 years, there's never been a day that I've went into Max and said, you know what? I think that I'm going to go back to that job. I wouldn't last, because I don't like people telling me what to do. So I have a real problem with authority. So I would never make it, especially being a CEO for the last 10 years. You also need a good support system. You need people that are behind you. Max was the only one that was really supportive in my life. I remember my brother, who's a psychologist, saying, "Hey, Christy, you should just keep a good job because you'll have a good future." Like, that's the poor dad kind of mindset. You want to have that rich dad mindset. Thank you, Robert Kiyosaki. Like, you have to think like a rich person to become rich. So that's something to keep in mind, is to surround yourself with people that are on a higher level than you. And we talk about this stuff all the time, Chip, but it's just kind of tying it all together. Another thing Chip mentioned is you want contacts in the business world. If you're a woman starting a handyman business and you don't want to swing a hammer, you need to have somebody to power wash. You need somebody to do carpentry. You need somebody to do painting. But you can find them all online nowadays. It's so simple. And you don't need a lot of financial resources to start a handyman business. If you have tools, you can start a handyman business.
That's it.
In an app.
Yeah.
No, not on a.
Yeah, Facebook for sure. Facebook is the best and the best bang for your buck. And that's all stuff that we talk about all the time. And also, if you're that personality that just doesn't like talking to people, not necessarily like shy, like our friend Sammy Christy was talking about, but you just don't like people. Trust me, I get it. But what you need, but you got to find somebody that does now. And that's and that you got to find somebody you can trust and that does. Because if you're not going to be good customer service, figure out how to get good customer service. Doesn't mean you don't do it. You can work on you for as long as you want, but if you want to jump in head first, take that imperfect action and go find somebody else that can. Find somebody that's a smooth talker that you hate listening to, because 90% of the time that's the person that's going to be good at it. So, and I'm just talking to a specific personality type right now, but that's if you're one of those people, that doesn't mean you can't do it. You just find somebody that does it for you. And that right there is a rich dad, poor dad, mentality right there. You can always find somebody that'll do it for the right price.
And remember, when you start this business, you're going to have hiccups. You're going to have bumps. Even when you're in handyman business fundamentals, you're going to have problems that arise in business, and that success is not going to come overnight. I remember after we started the ad in the newspaper, all of a sudden our calls quit coming in, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? Well, they got a new salesperson at the newspaper and they took our ad out of the newspaper. So for a couple of weeks we didn't have any phone calls because of some idiot at the trib. So you have to keep on top of your business, and it's not going to come overnight, but it will come. There's going to be disappointments. You're going to have character building days, but you've got to be able to withstand those pressures and keep building that handyman business. The ability to withstand those pressures and remain motivated in your handyman business is essential. So, I mean, these were just a couple of tips on how to start that 6-figure handyman business, but most of it, 80% of it, mental game, Chip.
Yeah, it's all you. I mean, that's why I named my personal podcast Getting Out of My Own Head, because ultimately I can do anything in the world I want to. The only thing stopping me is me, and that's for everybody. So get out of your comfort zone, man. I'll invite you out here. It's super scary, but come on.
Yeah, and if you guys want to learn more about handyman business fundamentals, this week we're actually opening it up to not just people with handyman businesses, but people that want to start a handyman business. If you want to start a handyman business, come on Thursday morning, 10 a.m. You can go to any of our pages, the Edge Biz, Handyman Business Fundamentals, Handyman Coaching. I mean, we've probably got 10 or 20 different handyman pages and groups across Texas. Yep. Join those groups, click on the link, register for the Handyman Business Fundamentals web class, and we're going to give you 3 secrets to start a 6-figure handyman business in the next 90 days, because I've done it over and over and over again. Chip's done it over and over and over again. Max has done it over and over and over again. why not learn from the people that have paid that stupid tax so you cannot pay the stupid tax?
Exactly. All right. Oh, sorry. Well, that's all we have for this week. Christy, anything else though at the end? Sorry.
That is it. I see that you got some stuff to take care of, Chip.
Yeah, apparently so. Well, guys, we love you. Stay safe. For now, this has been the Edge Podcast with Chip and Christy. See you next time.
Bye, guys.